Team USA Paintball player has been fired from the team after mocking a teen hospitalized with COVID, saying, "Ma'am, your kid does not need a COVID shot. Your kid needs an effing treadmill," the former Team USA Paintball player Jessica Maiolo appears to say in a video. Now, the first thing I always say is you shouldn't be getting medical opinions from TikTokers. You should be going and talking to your trusted medical professional. But the one thing I really want to point out here before we get into the story, well, I should say the two things, is the elephant in the room, comorbidities, and how they're playing a role in COVID deaths, because it is true. Reuters, many other, the CDC, 94% of those who have died from COVID have had comorbidities. And this means some of these deaths can be prevented with better health practices and better lifestyle choices. Now, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Again, look, if you're somebody with bad knees and I tell you to go run and then your knees break, I'm not playing the game. I'm just saying people should figure out how to lead healthier lives. And we could maybe then start saving many more lives. But the other thing I want to point out just before we get started is, why has everybody got to be so mean? Look, I get it. You know, you want to point out comorbidities and you want to tell people they've got to do better. They got to do right by themselves. But you don't got to be mean about it. I get it's the internet. The internet's a nasty place. Everybody's all, for the most part, a lot of people are mean online. I've been on the internet my whole life. I get it. Welcome to the internet. People are nasty. But can we do better? Can we just be not as mean? Because look, when you come out and say things like this, you're not arguing to anybody. You're not convincing anybody. You come out and insult people and deride them. And I want to stress, man, this teen who's overweight, they're in a hospital, man. Like, the family's probably freaking out. They're probably worried about the life of this individual. We don't need to come out and be all nasty about it. But this combines a few things. Cancel culture, because apparently some young woman, I'm assuming she was joking. She came out and she was like, my dad invented toaster strudel and I'm going to report you to the company. And I'm like, is toaster strudel a sponsor of the paintball or something? I have no idea. But then this woman gets canceled. Now, she should not have been canceled. She should not be booted off the team for this. People are so stupid and sensitive. Calm down. She could be a little nicer. But we should talk about what's going on with obesity, because the CDC has put out a statement about obesity and COVID. And I think we should talk about it. Because interestingly, right now, many people on the left who are typically pro-universal healthcare are all of a sudden having a problem with the idea that we have to pay the bills for the anti-vaxxers. Well, what do you think the conservative argument is about universal health care? It's literally that argument. You're only now realizing this when they say, why should we pay the bill for people who live unhealthy lifestyles? That's the conservative argument. And now we're seeing establishment leftist types all of a sudden walking away from their universal health care ideas because they don't like people who won't get the vaccine. Let's talk about this stuff. First, what happened with Team USA Paintballer? The Independent reports a professional paintball player has been removed from her team after she appeared to mock a teenager sick with COVID. Former Team USA Paintball player Jessica Maiolo, 31, recently posted a TikTok video of herself commenting on 17-year-old David Espino, a high school student who was hospitalized with the virus. In the background of the video, a TV news broadcast shows David in a hospital bed. The backlash was swift. Another TikToker, R Exorcist, reposted the video with her own commentary edited in, saying, "Jessica, as a member of Team USA Paintball, I really don't think you're qualified to speak on public health issues, especially not when it's to fat shame a hospitalized teenager who probably didn't have a say in his vaccination status." Now, I find the faux outrage and pseudo activism, the faux activism, to be quite annoying. I will say, man, don't make fun of people in hospital beds who are dying. We're trying to convince people to do better. We're trying to convince people to be calm, reasonable, and rational. You don't do that by insulting somebody who's literally potentially on their deathbed. But not like I like the cancel culture stuff either. Miss Maiolo's original video has since been deleted, but that didn't stop TikTok users from condemning the joke in comments. I've seen so many videos of adults being mean to children and even babies because they're in a hospital with COVID. I don't understand it. I agree with that sentiment. Why? What? Another user fumed. I fully cannot believe she thought saying any of that on the internet was going to turn out good for her. Vile human. As the outrage grew, Team USA Paintball finally put out a statement saying Miss Maiolo had been removed from the team. Team USA Paintball has no tolerance for discrimination or bullying of any kind. An investigation into the troubling conduct of Miss Maiolo has been concluded. We've decided to remove her from the team indefinitely. You know what? I don't paintball, but I'm not a fan of that either. Yo, everybody just calm down for once. We got a problem with comorbidities. The United States has an obesity problem. But come on, y'all need to chill. This is only going to make things worse. Miss Maiolo released her own statement on Monday expressing regret, saying, "If I were to have such a moment again to convey my full thoughts, I would choose my words more carefully and consider how my opinions may affect others. It was never my intention to shame any individual. I know that there is much I may not know about the boy in the video, and I do hope that he is well." David has reportedly recovered from the virus after a 10-day stay in the hospital, wherein he received oxygen therapy. Well, I'm glad to hear that he's okay. I don't care what you think about whether somebody isn't taking care of themselves or whether they should be more responsible with their weight and lifestyle. I don't want to see these people lose their lives. So I'm glad this person is doing better. And now I would say to David, I'm elated and extremely happy to see that the doctors were able to help you. And perhaps this is an opportunity to consider doing right by your health, talking to your doctor about ways that you can improve your health, prevent this hospitalization from happening again. This is something we need to talk about because it is playing a huge role in what's happening with COVID. Now, when you come out and you say harsh things like this, again, cancel culture was stupid. We have it from the CDC. Obesity, race, ethnicity, and COVID-19. They go to mention adult obesity is increasing. So Jessica Maiolo, right? She's not wrong, okay, in her sentiment. She was just kind of a dick about presenting it. So with all due respect, I appreciate that she came out with the apology, and I think we should recognize she's right. Now, the CDC is telling us this. They say obesity worsens outcomes for COVID-19. Adults with excess weight are at even greater risk during the COVID-19 pandemic. Having obesity, well, I should say she's right in the sense that obesity is a problem. As for the vaccine stuff, that's your and your doctor's decision. But they say this: having obesity may triple the risk of hospitalization due to a COVID-19 infection. Obesity is linked to impaired immune function. Obesity decreases lung capacity and reserve and can make ventilation more difficult. A study of COVID-19 cases suggests that risks of hospitalization, intensive care unit admission, invasive mechanical ventilation, and death are higher with an increasing BMI. The increased risk for hospitalization or death was particularly pronounced in those under age 65. More than 900,000 adult COVID-19 hospitalizations occurred in the U.S. between the beginning of pandemic and November 18, 2020. Models estimate that 30.2% of these hospitalizations were attributed to obesity. So to all the people on the left, they want to come out and they want to say, here's what you should do to end this pandemic. I say, no, talk to your doctor. Because I'll tell you this. If this is the data that your doctor is going to give you, maybe the doctor is going to say you need to go for a walk. You need to reduce the salt and the carbs and things like that. I don't know exactly what you should do because I'm not a nutritionist or a doctor. I'm just saying the CDC is coming out with this information, which I want to throw back to the Rand Paul thing, right? Rand Paul made a comment about the CDC, what he referred to as anti-science, and called on people to resist. We saw almost immediately many leftists, I shouldn't say leftists, but like establishment Democrat type leftists saying that he was telling people to ignore the CDC itself, not giving the context of one specific policy he disagreed with. Not that I'm saying he's right or anything. I'm just saying this. I think we can all agree when the CDC comes out and says obesity is 30.2% of the hospitalizations were attributed to obesity. We can say, hey, we in this country have a problem with this. We need to address it. We need to encourage people to do better. We need to tell people, listen, go for a walk. Seriously, just go for a walk. I can't tell you how good it feels to exercise and how amazing you feel every day when you consistently exercise. It's like you get that snowball rolling down the hill. It might be slow to start. It might be taxing, but eventually it's just taking care of itself, man. Exercise, it feels so good. I skate every day, literally every day, at least a little bit, and it's so much fun. And then what happens is I constantly feel like I got an electrical charge, like I'm just energized. How do you think I'm able to talk so much nonstop all day, every day? It's crazy, isn't it? Exercise, man. Reading a whole lot, exercise that mind, exercise that body. Keep yourself healthy. Now, admittedly, I should eat a little bit better than I do. I wouldn't say I eat as bad as most Americans, but we eat out too much, and that's the issue. So now it's like we're gonna start doing better. We're gonna do better because we are responsible for our health. Which brings me to the point about universal healthcare that I want to get into. We got this tweet from this here fella, Justin Wolfers, that's getting picked up a little bit. He's a professor at University of Michigan Econ and the Ford School, and he's a New York Times contributor. He says, when anti-vaxxers rack up tens of thousands of dollars in hospital bills, who pays? Think about it, and you'll realize that their political positions are effectively being subsidized by members of insurance pools, taxpayers, and the vaccinated. The problem is not just that anti-vaxxers are risking the health of kids and the immunocompromised and all of us at risk of breakthrough infections. It's also that when they hurt themselves, we pay. This is a pretty stark framing, which I first read from Mike Makowski, summarizing a column written by Jonathan Meir here for MarketWatch. Here's what they say. Opinion. Don't want the COVID-19 vaccine? Then pay the full cost if you land in the hospital. Put your money where your mouth is or get vaccinated. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not going to speak for this person, this individual. I don't know his political positions on universal health care. But I do think it's fascinating now that we're getting mainstream pushback on the idea of universal health care. As the CDC already stated, obesity plays a role in hospitalizations, 30.2%. Poor lifestyle choices that people make results in our hospital bills being much, much higher. Now, hold on there a minute. I've been to the hospital before. I have that story you probably heard me say. I went to, after I left Vice, I had a week in between where I didn't have insurance. And they tried charging me, I think it was something like 20 grand. I can't remember the exact number. It was insane. It was like one day in the hospital and I was like, this is nuts. That's insane. So yes, hospital bills are screwed up entirely. I think we need dramatic and extreme healthcare reform now. Personally, I am in favor of universal healthcare for basic kind of coverage. What that means is certain surgeries and more expensive procedures would have to be covered by private insurance, but basic stuff like broken bones and maybe getting the flu would be universally covered. That being said, just because I favor the system doesn't mean I think we can implement it right now in our country. I'd like to see that happen, but that's like saying I want to be at the finish line right when the race starts. No. We got to run the race. We got a marathon here. We got 26 miles to go. We're going to have to go through every step of the way if we want to get to that end point, which means we're far away from that goal, but I would favor that. And here's the issue I take. One of the most important points that's brought up by conservatives that makes it very difficult to implement universal health care is the fact that there are people who don't take care of themselves. The fact that people aren't being responsible with their health and their lives. They're not exercising. They're not eating right. They're sitting in their living room eating Hot Pockets and drinking Mountain Dew and doing no exercise. And, look, if that is you, I'm not trying to be mean or come down or mock or deride. Absolutely not. Quite the opposite. I want to just suggest, why don't you pick up a little bushel of broccoli and some fresh chicken cutlets or something? Throw them throw in a little frying pan with a little dash of salt and peanut oil or something like that. Man, I love it. I just absolutely love steamed broccoli. It is just perfect. The broccoli steamed, boom, done. You don't got to add anything to it. I don't even put cheese on it. I just genuinely enjoy that stuff. There are a lot of people who have bad habits because American consumerism has just made it easy and cheap and effective. And you know what? Responsibility isn't easy. Responsibility is hard. It is so easy. That's what I'm saying. We eat out too much. It's so easy to just pick up the phone and be like, deliver the food. I don't want to do it. I don't want to make it. And then you get greasy, oily garbage. So here's what ends up happening. The conservative argument against universal health care. You have too many people who are going to clutter up the system because they make bad life choices. And then we have to wait in line behind them and pay their bills. You know what? I can't reconcile that. The other issue is the race-based distribution of vaccines was horrifying. They actually, the government was advocating this. I'm like, dude, come on, man. We set it up by region. We treat everyone fairly and equally. We don't implement race-based medical treatments. That's horrifying. So here's what ends up happening. Look, I see this story of this young woman. She shouldn't be canceled. She should be nicer. But there's a point to be made. People are not taking care of themselves, so why should the rest of us? In fact, I actually agree with Justin Wolfers when he says, who's going to be paying the bills for these anti-vaxxers who are in the hospital? Everybody else. You know what, Justin? You are correct. How do we solve for that? Well, one of the things I said is that aside from, the general health advice that you would get, I think that if we worked to reduce comorbidities, we would see a dramatic reduction in COVID-19 deaths, and that would be amazing. It would be tremendous. This is from ABC4 News. CDC says 94% of COVID-19 deaths had underlying medical conditions. Now, a lot of people confuse this as to think that people didn't die from COVID. The way I explain it to people is like, imagine you have a bridge that's not being maintained very well. But it's a bridge and it works. And, someone comes along and then hacks away at one of the support columns. And then the bridge collapses. People would then say, oh, but the bridge was old and rickety and it wasn't being well taken care of. And you're like, yeah, I know, that's true. And we should have maintained it. But there was a dude hitting the bottom of it. You know what I mean? And then it fell down. That's how you can understand the comorbidity thing. But I also think it's fair to say then, if we maintain that bridge, if we reinforce it, if we replace the broken supports, then someone can come along and whack it all they want. And we're like, it's reinforced, it's well maintained, it's not going to fall. This is a story going back to August 30th of 2020. They say, according to the CDC, comorbidity is defined as more than one disease or condition. More than one disease or condition is present in the same person at the same time. Conditions described as comorbidities are often chronic or long-term conditions. Other names to describe comorbid conditions are coexisting or co-occurring conditions, and sometimes also multimorbidity or multiple chronic conditions. I'll put it this way. If you are morbidly obese, that could kill you. But it doesn't mean that you necessarily will. There's a lot of people who are very, very overweight who are alive. But then you get COVID, and then you are more likely to be hospitalized, more likely to suffer serious effects. It's harder for them to give you oxygen therapy and things like that. So ultimately what it comes down to is we need to change our culture. I think if we're only talking about big pharma solutions and medical technology and stuff, we're missing a big piece of this picture. People should spend more time in the outdoors. People should, in my opinion, get away from cities. And I know people are like, yeah, but what about, Miami? I'm like, Miami's great, but you still get out and go hiking, breathe some fresh air, stop polluting. That's the other thing. It's like, I don't want to encourage people to go to the forest and then see all pollution everywhere. No, we should treat the outdoors with respect. We should go for long walks and look at the trees and smell the flowers and be safe. And I tell you, a walk is a great way to just help stay in shape and stay fit. But you always want to eat better. And now I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that. So you got to figure out what's right for you on the internet, ask professionals and stuff like that. But eat better, get away from the cities, try and do right and be responsible. Be responsible for the garbage you produce. Be responsible for the food you eat. Be responsible for the health of yourself and stop demanding other people do it for you. Now, in the future, I envision and would wish for, which may be utopian and not possible. Someone gets sick. They walk into the hospital and the doctor says, right this way, and they treat the individual. And they don't have to worry about going bankrupt. Someone breaks an arm. Doctor treats it. Now, perhaps the problem is you combine universal health care with universal freedoms and liberties, and you'll get people who eat 10 Hot Pockets for breakfast, and then they end up in the hospital quite a bit, and everyone else has got to pay for that. In which case, I'm not entirely sure the system can work. It may be utopian. Because you look at what's going on in some of these other countries where the left often says, oh, look how great universal health care is. It's working here, here, and here. And then you actually look at the videos and there's people saying, it's actually not that great. You're waiting in long lines. You've got to wait 3 or 4 months to get important surgeries for things that you might need. Some surgeries won't even be covered. And so most of these countries, I believe almost all of them, offer private supplemental insurance because it's not so simple. But I like that. I like that idea of a future. If we're going to get there, we need to change our culture. We need to encourage people to be healthy. We need to get rid of this idea of fat shaming, okay? We should never encourage someone to be unhealthy and put their lives at risk. The last thing I want to hear is that this young man died of COVID because of a comorbidity, because if he was overweight, it wouldn't have happened, or, he would have had milder symptoms, things like that. I want to see this young man thrive, survive, and change the world. I want to see you do the same. I want to see everybody do a little bit better. Unfortunately, there are too many people who want to pass off responsibility for themselves to other people, which is why you see things like this. This one kind of slipped under the radar, didn't it? California unanimously approves America's first state-funded guaranteed income. The Golden State will provide state-funded payments to qualifying individuals. Okay. We know what's going on with the labor shortage, with the unemployment payments. We can't keep taking the responsibility away from the individual because then Look, I think Mike Bloomberg has it wrong. Bloomberg seems to think that you can tax sugary drinks because people are too dumb. He's actually stated that Mike Bloomberg thinks that Bloomberg said tax the poor. Bloomberg said it's because Bloomberg, I'm making sure I'm saying his name, Bloomberg thinks that people weren't smart enough to make decisions for themselves, and that he said if they had money, they'd make bad decisions. That's bad. That's wrong. That is someone saying, I refuse to take responsibility for the culture that I helped create. No, what you need to do is encourage people to do better. Don't be mean to people, especially in the hospital. Be nice. Imagine if she came out and instead said, this is a horrifying story. I hope David recovers. I wish his family the best. Please, my friends, you need to understand how obesity is impacting people who are contracting COVID. The CDC has already stated that you are more at risk if you are obese. Please do it for yourself, do it for your family and your friends. And then there will be no cancellation. The real issue is just being mean. I think the idea of fat shaming is stupid, but I also think being mean to people who are fat is stupid. I think you can politely tell someone like, with all due respect, I'd love to see you exercise and do better with your health. Instead, we live in this world now where even that is offensive. I remember there was this one viral video where a guy emailed a news woman, and she was obese. And he said something that was actually rather polite, if not direct, where he said, you are a role model to young women and your obesity is worrying. I would encourage you to get healthy and fit so that, young women who look up to you will also do the same. And then she came out and shamed the guy. And I'm like, dude, he didn't come out and call you a bunch of names. He didn't insult you. He didn't laugh at you. He said, I want you to do better because you're a role model to these kids. I agree with that. We got to be careful about this, man. Too many people want to feign some kind of injustice occurred so they can get internet points. Nah, this is a real issue. The CDC has said it. They're correct. I think we know that. I'm not going to, I don't pick and choose necessarily what to trust. I'm not a big fan of government in general because I don't think that they're magically like always right. But I think there are some things that most of us recognize when you look at the hard numbers. When the CDC comes out and says most of this stuff, I'll take some of it with a grain of salt. But what else am I supposed to base my judgments on? I'll talk to a doctor. I'll do some research. In the end, I think this is something we need to talk about. If we do this right, we can actually inspire people to be healthier. And I'll tell you this, if people were healthier, our hospital bills would be a lot less anyway. Let's get America back on track. Let's get a nation of people who are fit, who enjoy exercise. We need to address our cultural problems. It's not an issue of law. It's an issue of culture. Because the law can say a lot of things. But if there's no cultural will behind these things, then what happens? Like free speech, for instance. Our modern understanding of free speech is new. We had the First Amendment since the Constitution was enacted, and yet people still weren't free to speak their minds. You'd get arrested for obscenity or indecency or things like that. And we had an Office of Censorship in World War II. So we have done better. We have improved. Our culture changed. And we said, here's what this means. Let's do the same thing for our health. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.